Right. Hello, everybody. This is Henry Schneider with the Business Performance Podcast. And today, my guest is Ankesh Kumar, who is the CEO of LetsChat, which is a startup for allowing salespeople to talk to one another and exchange information. So please welcome Ankesh to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much, Henry. I appreciate it.
Okay, so Ankesh, would you please briefly describe your company, the types of customers, and the kinds of products and services you provide? And I know like LetsChat's like a couple of weeks old, but you said you pivoted from your other company. So just kind of talk about that, if you would.
Yeah, so the problem we're trying to solve is communication. I mean, if we look at our own personal lives, it probably just for ease of explanation, we use email about 1/3. We use, phone calls and conversations as 1/3, and chat, whether it's, iMessage, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., Skype. But when we have salespeople communicating with their prospects, that's not always the case because no prospect wants to give them their Skype ID or their Messenger, etc. And so what we've built is a very simple way for the prospect to initiate a chat conversation and find information, because this sales is all about communication. It's about learning about what the salesperson's selling and what the customer needs. So there's a two-way communication, and clearly, chat is a more efficient way of doing that than email. So right now, most people rely on LinkedIn messaging or email to do that. But I just look at it as the next evolution. It's there in our personal lives. It's there in our internal. Things like Slack are internally, but for external communication, there's nothing exists right now.
So is that kind of then what you're saying? It kind of breaks down the barriers for the customer because they don't have to give a whole lot of information to you first, but they're just setting up a chat so you can kind of explore each other.
Yeah. It's very, very simple. It's just a link. You just click on the link, and a chat session starts in a browser session. As soon as you close the browser session, it goes away. So there's no sharing of any cell phone numbers or email ID or anything like that. So it's very, and also honestly from the salespeople standpoint, they also don't want their cell phone number getting out. I mean, everyone is a little wary about that. So it provides privacy both ways. And then, if the conversation, the chat goes well, then it goes to the next level. And once you've built up a relationship, people are more comfortable in sharing things, then it just goes from there. But, it's a really quick, easy way for the prospect to evaluate it's something that's going to, be beneficial for them, without sort of, that sort of going back and forth from that email back and forth, scheduling a time, etc.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's really nice. So, since you said you pivoted recently from what you started with to where you are now, so what caused that pivot?
Well, I've always had this fascination with, natural language processing and chatbots, so we were always looking at it, and it just seemed to be provide a greater ROI. We were working on personalization, which is also important when when you're talking to someone, something about them or their family or their friends. It just sort of helps build a bond. But this was clearly a higher ROI, where you could actually have shorter sales cycles and really accelerate the process.
Okay, so with Sharetivity, then it was more like interacting with people, and now with LetsChat, you're involving more of the machine learning and it's letting AI kind of run things?
Yeah, well, Sharetivity is more like finding, for example, that you might have tweeted something or you might have posted something on Instagram and shared something socially and using that as an icebreaker. Where with LetsChat, it was more sort of about making that chat private and secure and fast and efficient. And so I always think sales is about communication. And if you can communicate faster, and I think it benefits both the salesperson, because salespeople have told me, I'd rather a prospect say I'm not interested and I can focus on someone else and move on. But when you don't get a response, being ghosted is not a great feeling. So if it's easy for someone to just say, hey, thank you, but no thank you, appreciate it, and move on, I think it's good for everyone. So, in personal life communication is good, and business life communication is good. So with LetsChat, our goal is to make a communication channel that's efficient for everyone.
Cool. So what is the importance of quality to what you're trying to do with LetsChat?
Quality in the sense of.
Well, it could be a variety of things. Quality of the messaging, quality of the experience.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So user experience is, it has to be simple for both parties, because salespeople are notorious for, low attention span, and prospects have got so much going on. So we've really worked on simplicity to make the user experience just simple, one click to chat. And that's been a real focus, and it's tough, when you're building product, you always want to, hey, let's add this feature, let's add that feature, how about adding attachments to the chat, how about adding other people, and you keep thinking about all these great ideas, and you think, we really have to go through a decision-making processes. How much value is that going to add in terms of complexity? There's a lot of. I love LinkedIn. I think it's a great product, but it's got a lot of functionality. It gets a little confusing sometimes, and so you don't want to fall into that trap. And it's a fine balance, and not everyone's going to be happy, but that's something we're continually working on.
So, what do you do to kind of check out all these features and functionalities, make certain that they even are going to be used to your client base or your customers? It's good for you, but maybe they're not even interested in those things.
Yeah, well, we flipped it around, so we don't add anything until a customer requests it.
Okay.
So you have a baseline. That's why I try the whole thing. We have a baseline functionality, and anything that the customer requests that especially if more than one requests it, then you're like, oh, we're onto a winner here. So that's basically it's a mantra. It's all well and good sitting in a coffee shop and jotting down notes and thinking to myself, man, that sounds great, but you want to get out of the laboratory. You want to be talking to people. And just getting their feedback.
So what's the biggest challenge that you face in trying to get that meaningful interaction and to help you with your performance of your product?
From a product standpoint, it's just getting people to play with it, look at it, and provide feedback. There's a lot of noise out there. And not just specifically in terms of competition, but just people are inundated with just tweets and Facebook posts and Instagram, and hey, sharing this on iMessage, some news article, and so it's just kind of like rising above the noise. That's probably the biggest challenge.
Okay, yeah, and there's so much information running around too. So what are some of the common fears that people face when they're trying to address the sales process that you are trying to solve?
So, but the biggest problem I think salespeople have is actually is getting a response from their prospect. I think that's 10, 15 years ago when I was in sales, we used to pick the phone up and call people all the time, and you had a fear of actually rejection. People putting the phone down to you, being a little rude, but it's a little easier now because of the email. It's less personal. People can, if they don't respond and stuff. But it's still, I think not getting any feedback is difficult. So I think that's the challenge. I think we're trying to resolve is getting a response and taking that out of the equation.
Yeah. So are there other obstacles that you see that can get in the way?
Well, yeah. Well, I've done a few startups before, so I've tried to take out as much as I can. I think one of the mistakes that we've made in the past is that you sort of you drink your own Kool-Aid, right? You think to yourself, oh my God, this is going to be really, really good. You take it to market, you spend months building something, and then it just falls flat, and then you've burnt through a lot of money, you've burnt through a lot of time, and so we've really tried to keep our burn rate low, and expectations are so the ability to move quickly, like we were able to pivot here was a good thing. So I think raising money too early is I would recommend that not for people to try. Just make sure that the biggest validation is customers. You might think that it's great and the product works, but any investor will tell you, well, proof of the pudding is actually in the eating. Where's the money? So those are the kind of pitfalls that you try to anticipate. Other pitfalls are losing key employees, especially at this small stage. If you've got 5 people in the company and you lose one person, that's 20% of your workforce has just walked out the door. So you have to constantly make sure that everyone's on board and happy, because things never go the way expected, and people start losing a little interest, and if they're good, they'll be getting other offers from other people. So you have to be on top of that and avoid that pitfall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so could you share a story how you kind of address that to keep people from leaving and taking your intellectual property with them as they walk out the door?
Well, I think the important thing is I always, even when my previous company, we got to about 250 employees. I mean, today we're only at 5, but even at that large scale, I always try to have as much of a personal relationship with people. And I sincerely mean it. It was not always like, hey, how's it going? How's the family sort of thing? It has to be a little bit deeper. And people do open up, and people do want to share stuff, and they've got things in their personal life. And when you've gone through it, and I share my stuff as well. If things are not going great, you just say, I'm sorry, I had a bad weekend. This happened, that happened. My car broke down, or whatever. Had an argument with the wife. I'm sorry, I'm not in a good mood. And then people feel more comfortable about opening up about their stuff.
Yeah.
And once you build that personal relationship up and you're able to talk, if people are not happy, they're more likely to say, they'll give you a vibe, first of all. So, so you can pick it up, but you want to anticipate before then, just keep them in touch and tell them your concerns and what do you think we should do? Things aren't going as well as what's your ideas? What's your suggestions? So it's not all on you. So we're all rowing the boat together. And so I think the relationship and rapport are really important.
Okay, so then if you could distill that down to like a short little moral, you would say what?
Build bonds, build relationship, build friendships. I think one of the best things I've ever done, I even now from my previous startups 20 plus years ago, people still reach out to me and say, that was the best time of my life. And that to me makes me more happier than, number of users, amount of money we've raised and sold a company for. I think so. Startups are a journey, and enjoy the journey, enjoy the relationships with the journey.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. So, as we were talking earlier before we started, you've got quite an interesting experience being born in India, living in London, and then out to Silicon Valley. So could you share with us your journey and what defining moment led you to where you are today?
Yeah, I was about 4 years old. I got bored of India, so I got on an aeroplane. Actually, my father worked for Air India, so he put me on an aeroplane, and we lived in London. And very fortunate, working for the airline to travel around. And he did postings in Amsterdam and Beirut and Sydney, Australia. And so, we're able to see a lot of the world, which was great. My cousin lived in San Jose, and I came to visit it, and it was like just fell in love with the place. Very warm, not just the climate, but the people as well, and the opportunity. And so I was like, I did my master's in IT in Portsmouth and Brighton. I studied there in England, and I was gainfully unemployed, single, no responsibility, no mortgage, nothing holding me down, no relationships or anything. I was like, okay. So I just borrowed a couple of $1,000 from my mum and just said, okay, I'm going to wing it. And I'm talking about like 1989, 1990. There was no cell phones. And so I'd literally get a roll of quarters, and I was living downtown San Francisco. Me and my friends would go out in the evening, dinner, drinks. But I'd be up at 8 o'clock in the morning just putting those quarters into the phone box and Yellow Pages and trying to get a job. And got a job in San Jose for a staffing company. Worked there for a couple of years, and then went to a company in San Mateo and started my own staffing company, which we started. By the couple of years I'd worked, I'd saved about $50,000. So I started my company, but I never even touched that money. We were cash flow positive from day one, and we grew it 1, 5, 15, 25 million, doing 2.2 million EBIT a year. We sold it to the parent company of Monster, the career site, TMP. And then I did another software company called Personic, which we raised about 50 million for. And we were going to take that public, but the market crashed. And that was one of the really stressful times, actually, because we had about 250 employees, and we had to raise 10 million. Otherwise, and I was talking about relationships and bonds I built with my employees. You got to know their families and kids, and a lot of them taking mortgages, car payments. And, it was the worst time when you got these people dependent on you, and especially with the market downturn and everything, it was a really stressful time. But then since then, I've been doing some personal investment, and, I've had a few ventures, and I think I mentioned we had some transaction with Google about sharing. We sold some IP to them about sharing as a page ranking mechanism. You're all familiar with the Facebook like button. We actually sort of came up with that concept a year before Facebook launched that. And so that's sort of where we are today.
Cool. Yeah, that's very interesting. So, what advice do you give to people who want to go through the whole entrepreneurial road here? Because it is highly risky, but you've been successful. I mean, it's a wonderful success story coming here with $3,000 and being able to turn it into millions. So, what advice do you have?
Well, I think this is kind of obvious, but work with something you're passionate about. I mean, I tell my kids that as well. It doesn't matter. I mean, my daughter is just actually going off to university, and her real passion is she loves working with kids. She gets a real kick out of it, and she's like, "Hey, Dad, I may not make a lot of money, but that's not the defining thing in life." I think that whether you're interested in writing, journalism has its ups and downs, especially with the with the internet. Of its sports, work with your passion and just be the best who you are, no matter whatever industry job you do. And if you decide to become an entrepreneur, if you're passionate about it, you just have so much fun and you will just, be better than others. And I think I've seen a lot of people, especially in the last 10 years, come to Silicon Valley and their primary goal, and they see people making millions and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. And I know of kind of like a friend of a friend who's starting a venture, who's actually a professional, and it's like completely unrelated, and I don't have the heart to say this is nothing to do in the medical field which they're in. This has got and they're doing a lot of stuff on videos. It's like videos for sports, and I'm like, well, how's that going to really translate? So I think if you're thinking about doing something, do something that you're really passionate about and you have knowledge. You have knowledge about that, and you're going to learn, whether it's photography. So anything like that would be, would be, it's a great start.
Okay.
The other thing I'd say is just surround yourself with good people. I think people are very helpful. I've noticed I've reached out to people on LinkedIn, or I've seen people write articles on a subject, and and if you're sincere, people do follow back up with you and will give you some time, especially if it's a subject they're interested in as well.
Sure.
And you can and I think just build some good advisors and be respectful of their time. And I think those are a couple of things that would really help move you along.
Mm-hmm. So the space you're in now is pretty competitive, right? So
correct.
What's the most important thing customers should be considering when they evaluate what you are offering against the competition?
Well, I think the things would be speed. How quickly can you think get implemented? But probably start off the other way around. The probably thing is the return on investment. How is this going to impact my my bottom line? Am I going to get more customers? And I think that's what our number one metric is. Is getting more engagement from prospects, making it easier for them to respond. So, for example, if you're sending out 100 emails a day and you're getting 3 responses back a day, so that goes to 6. That's a meaningful response, and that's kind of what we're looking at. I mean, I'm aiming for 100% response rate, increase in the response rate, because people have the option to chat now instead of hit the reply button. And then you have to think to yourself, what am I going to do? But if you just hit chat, it's just easier, to make a quick determination. So ROI is the first thing. Then speed of implementation. The other questions we get is like integration into things like Salesforce. Mm-hmm. Can I get up and running quickly? Do I have to do a lot of training? And is there an integration? And so those are the factors that typically would be money. Funnily enough, money is not an issue. Cost is not an issue, because salespeople actually cost a lot of money. I mean, in Silicon Valley, a fully loaded sales guy is about $300,000, because they if you have a pre-sales engineer and everything else, if their number is over 10 million, I mean, I'm talking on the top end. So if you're paying $50 a month for them, that doesn't really come into the equation. So cost is not an issue, but you have to go through that, the whole the process, operations, and everything else.
Okay, great. Now you've been through many different companies. So you've learned a lot from going from startup to startup and buying and selling. So what are if you were to start all over from scratch, again, like you just started LetsChat here a couple of weeks ago, what behaviors are you keeping, and what are you doing differently to ensure your success?
I think, well, keeping, you have to have that intensity and passion for it. I recently reached out to one sales guy and wanted him to be an advisor because, we talked about this earlier on, product feedback as opposed to us making it. So I reached out to him and we spent talking for 30 minutes, and he emailed me back and he goes, "Hey, Ankesh, really excited about it." He goes, "I'm excited about the product, but I'm just as excited about the energy that you bring to it." So I think that can never go away. So whether it's partners, customers, employees, you have to have that intensity and passion and desire to really want to succeed. And people can smell that a mile away. And they can say, "Okay, this is something he's really excited about." He talks about it intelligently. I think as you get older, as I get older, I think we all sort of, our ego has to become smaller. And I think that's one thing I sort of take away from it. I don't think anything's given, you have to sort of like, "Hey, I built a really good product. You should be using it." And we are going to be the best. You take things in a little bit more perspective. And I think if you take the ego out of it. And so that's one thing definitely I've learned is to sort of like temper it down. And, we're not going to be the next billion-dollar company. I don't, in Silicon Valley, it's really like, "Hey, we're going to be the next unicorn," and you walk around, like a peacock. Yeah. And so take that out of it. If it happens, great, but let's just take care of going back to work, saying one step at a time.
Sure. So, okay, we could keep talking, but we're going to run out of time here pretty quickly. So how can people get in touch with you to learn more?
Well, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. They can go to the website, it's letschat.chat. So it's pretty easy. But, my email is Ankesh at letschat.chat. And feel free to just reach out to me directly. I'm happy to talk to people and help and give advice if people want to, talk further of their own startups or learn about, I'm always open to talking.
Cool. So, Ankesh, you're a fantastic storyteller. I really love your passion for what you're doing and the advice you talk about thinking strategically and acting tactically. And I'm sure that our viewers will find all of this just as fascinating. So, thank you so much for your time today. I really like you. Thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day to talk.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time as well.